So I'm Susan Kadilak. I'm the state broker for Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And I've been doing locally a series called Listing Mastery. It's a series of 6 different sessions just for all different things to do with listings and increasing your listing conversion. So I did session 2 this week, and I was talking to Nazar about it. He said, why don't you do it this week? So here I am. So I modified it a little bit as a webinar because right now we're only doing it live here in Boston, but I modified it for this. But just so you guys know, I'm on my iPad. So if anyone has questions or something, just put them in the chat, because the way my iPad works, I won't be able to see you guys once I share the screen. So I will dive right into it. So I know a lot of you, I have been in the real estate business for, this year will be my 23rd year. I've also been in residential development, building, renovations for the same amount of time. So I've always done both building and real estate. And, I created this because the market's changing. And as they say in real estate, you have to list to last. So this is all about your listing skills, your conversion skills, and how you're dealing with your clients. And this session really can apply to both buyers and sellers, but it's more geared towards sellers. So we're going to talk about advanced communication techniques, the power of tonality, and then something called the closer framework that will help you work through. So we start with, when you get called either by a buyer or a seller, a lot of times we're up against this negative perception of real estate agents. When you ask consumers what the first thing is that they think of when they think of real estate agents, the used car salesman is the first and the most common answer that you'll hear. And just to kind of further this a little bit, I said, let me go on Reddit, right, where people say things. And these are things that people have posted. That I don't trust my real estate agent, but I haven't gotten another one because in my experience, they're not concerned about my needs whatsoever. They just want to make a sale. Every house I look at, I should buy it now. They love it. Interest rates don't matter. These are a lot of things that clients say about real estate agents, and that's kind of how they're coming, that's kind of how they're approaching us when we meet them. So it's our job to kind of overcome this negative perception. This one says an agent very rarely represents their clients. Their clients want as much as they do saying whatever they need to talk you into to buy or sell. When it comes to actually needing a true non-boilerplate answer on basically anything that requires critical thinking, all my interactions have never yielded much, right? So this is not, not how we want to present ourselves. This is actually from one of my own reviews. I had a couple that I had met. They were very standoffish at first, both attorneys. They had already tried to buy a house a couple years prior, were not successful. And I was a little actually kind of surprised when I read the review, and they said that we naively believe that our buyer's agent would just open the door to homes found on Zillow. So this is somebody who had already tried to buy a house, had already made offers, had already gone into the market. And in the agents that they dealt with, that was their perception, that's what the agent does. So I put this in here just to say, don't be like everybody else. Don't be the zebra's ass. Turn around. About 80% of people report a strong preference for a salesperson who's going to guide them as a trusted advisor, right? I'm sure you've all heard the saying that everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold, right? So when people feel like you're there selling them and pushing them, a lot of times you'll get that resistance. So this whole piece is about how do we overcome that resistance and be the trusted advisor that people are looking for and that people need in this process, right? Because they're not buying a sweater, right? It's a big decision. They're not spending $100. They're spending a lot of money, probably the most money that they've ever spent in their life on anything. And they really need good advice, and they really need somebody that they can trust to walk them through it. According to NAR, the sellers said that their top criteria for choosing a real estate agent was your reputation, your honesty, and your trustworthiness. And when you meet with clients, this is one thing that, oftentimes you're going to be in competition. If somebody's calling you, they're probably getting a second or third opinion. How do you stand out, and how do you rate against those other agents? Because we always talk about showing value, but how are you doing that? Are you using the old school tactics of the me marketing, right? This is something that was posted very recently, and we've seen 100 of these. And who is this all about, right? This is about the agent. This isn't about the consumer. When consumers see this, they think they make too much money, they're full of themselves, and they're posting about themselves. And I know that a few weeks ago when the year ended, these were all over my feed. And a lot of times we get stuck in the feature don't trap. And I know when a lot of the commission things were going around, I saw a lot of posts of, oh, they don't want to pay buyer agents anymore. These are all the things that I do. And I actually went on Facebook and searched, and this is something that somebody posted about what realtors do. Most people have limited knowledge of what realtors do. They're usually described as glorified paper pushers, but we serve as the firewall between our client and the other parties involved. We, convert data into what can be accomplished by a buyer. We use our network. This goes on and on and on about all the things that we do. And it goes on. It goes on and on and on, right? Some agents, we have no personal time. We do this. We do all these things. And I've seen a ton of posts, and you see a lot of people do this. These are all the things that we do, right? We are not in a 9-to-5 workday. We work weekends. We do this. We do that. And a lot of agents put this stuff out and say, I'm sure everyone has seen the list of 179 things that realtors do, or these are all the things that I'm going to do for you. But the truth is, nobody cares, right? When you put posts out that long, they're too long, nobody's reading them, and nobody cares. The consumers are looking at, what are you going to do for me? And how does this impact me? I don't want to hear about all the things that you have to go through. I want to hear about what's happening with me and what you're going to, how you're going to help me, right? You don't want to come up like this guy. I'm Roger. Don't worry. I'm going to solve all your problems. Your customer has to be the hero in your marketing, in your conversations, not you and not your brand, right? Putting the customer first and putting them front and center. Gong Labs, they analyzed thousands of sales calls done in 2018, and the top sales performers have a talk to listen ratio of 43 to 57. So they're talking more than they listen. When you think about a natural born salesperson, somebody that you would call that, you would think of somebody who talks a lot, somebody who's very assertive. But, I think as the world has changed, I just don't think people respond to that anymore. And I think it's something that as we're approaching our clients, sometimes we think about our marketing and how we're talking to people from our perspective, but are we thinking about it from the other person's perspective? One of my agents I was talking to for the longest time, she was saying, I really want to get a dialer. I really want to get a dialer. And, I can't wait for the day that I can get a dialer. And then she says to me yesterday, she's like, I don't know what I was thinking. She's like, when I pick up the phone on a scam call and I hear the little bloop that you hear when somebody's calling you from a dialer, she goes, I hang up immediately. She's like, so why would I do that? She's like, I don't take those calls. But as soon as I hear it, I hang up. What is that going to do for me? Right. So sometimes we think about what we need and from our perspective, but we're not thinking about how the person's receiving it on the other end. In the study, the top performers were selling an average of 120% of their quota, and they did it by focusing less on presenting technical features and specs and more on getting customers to open up about their problems. So when we did this in class, we did the old classic, sell me this pen, right? And when I said, sell me this pen, everybody said, oh, it writes so smoothly. It's such a great price. It's a good looking pen, all these things. Everyone was focused on, how can I get you to buy this pen by telling you how wonderful the pen is? But nobody asked me if I even needed a pen. Nobody asked me any questions to figure out, what do I need? They were focused on the pen. So when we're talking to clients, we want to make sure that we're focusing on solving their problems and not on what I do, what we do. And the first part of that is to be an active listener. And that's when you're not only hearing what they're saying, but also attuning to their thoughts and feelings. And the big part of this is that it's non-competitive. I always say you have to be next to your customer, side by side. You're never across from your customer. You're always right next to them. So it never feels combative, argumentative, like you're trying to prove something to them. It's always that you're sitting next to them, right? You're on the same team. And it's important because you have to feel that common ground between the parties. Because if you aren't in agreement and they don't feel like you're on their team, it's going to be difficult to persuade them. It's going to be difficult to get them to listen to you, and it's going to be difficult to have difficult conversations if you're not on the same team. So the three components are cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. So cognitive is going to be not only paying attention to the information, but also understanding and integrating the information that they're giving you. So you're hearing, and I use the example of when you have a listing that's on 575 Main Street, and you're constantly getting the feedback from people, oh, my buyers didn't like it because it was on a busy street. Well, they knew it was on a busy street before they went there because it's 575 Main Street, right? So it wasn't really because it's on a busy street. What else are they saying, right? They might be saying, I see other houses for that price on streets that aren't busy, or I see other houses in better condition for that price. They're saying something else to you, and it's our job to figure out what are they saying and what do they mean. I love this one. The word listen contains the same letters as the word silent. So when they're talking, you want to let them go. Sometimes, I always make fun of my husband a little bit because I call him Chatty Cathy. And if there's silence, he feels like he has to fill it. And if you're not comfortable with silence, sometimes practicing that, because people will tell you more things if you just let things sit for a minute, because then they will fill the silence and talk more about what they need. So the wait, why am I talking? And then waste, why am I still talking? I went and bought Girl Scout cookies the other day, and when I came up, there were probably about 7 or 8 girls, and I knew 2 that I wanted, and I was kind of looking for a third one. And the little girl, she was so cute, but she was just like, this one has this, and this one has, and like, I couldn't even think because she was talking so much. And I finally was like, I just picked one because I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. It was the feeling of I need to get out of here, right? So when you're talking to clients, kind of have this rule that most of what you're going to be saying that's coming out of your mouth is you're asking questions, you're making restatements, and you're telling anecdotal stories that relate to their situation, right? Because if you're just talking to talk, a lot of times you can lose people. They may not be interested in it. They don't want to hear it. And it may not apply to them. So they may get bored and say, okay, this isn't helping me. So the questions, the restatements, and the anecdotal stories that are connected to what they're saying are going to let them know that you're listening to them and that you're actively listening. If you ever listen to a podcast, sometimes you'll see some of the hosts that are maybe newer. They might ask a question and say, oh, where did you go to school or whatever? And then the person answers. And instead of asking another question about what they said, they just move on to question 2. And it just gives you the feeling that they're not listening. They're just focused on what they're doing, and it's not really a conversation. So when people are talking, if you're thinking about what you're going to say next, that's kind of a little hint to say, okay, I need to slow down and maybe ask a question about what they're saying or restate what they're saying. Because if I'm thinking what's coming out of my mouth next, I'm not really listening to what they're saying. Emotional, staying calm during the conversation. And one of the biggest things here is managing emotional reactions. This is with sales. This is with team members. This is with anyone, right? If you are annoyed or bored and you express that may have an impact that you don't want it to have. So you want to try to keep your reactions to yourself, because if someone says, let's say you think their house is worth 500,000 and they say, well, I'd like to get 750. Instead of telling them they're crazy, which might be what you want to do, you might say, oh my God, like, where did you get that? That's not even close. You want to taper that down and make sure that you're listening to them. And when we get to the closer framework, we'll walk through like, how do you react to that when they give you something that you may want to react to. Chris Voss talks about tactical empathy, which is the art of influencing others by articulating what they're thinking, feeling, without agreeing, disagreeing, or sympathizing, right? This is more validation. You want to make sure that you're making your clients feel understood, right? What if they feel like you're not getting what they're saying, it's going to be hard for you to move on from that. And, he says, just as pliability removes tension from training, if you're employing tactical empathy and they feel like, not that you're agreeing with them, but that you're understanding them, it's going to be much easier to get them where you need them to be. And just always remember that it's about them and not you. And, we talk about when clients make decisions, a lot of it is emotion, not logic and reason. We all know we've had that buyer who says, these are all the things that I want. And you find the perfect house in the perfect location and it checks off all the boxes, but they just, for whatever reason, can't see themselves living there. And they may not have a logical reason, but they just know that that house just isn't for them. There's no amount of fact or logic that is going to talk them into wanting to buy that house, right? They just know that it's not right for them. And even if you think it is, it's not going to persuade them, right? So you have to pay attention to what they're telling you and always remember that it's about them. The behavior is conveying interest and comprehension verbally and non-verbally, and this comes back to your tone of speech. Most communication is through non-verbal means, only 7% is verbal. I put Jerry Seinfeld in here because if I try to read his jokes, they're not going to be funny, right? It's all about tone. It's the way he delivers it. It's the way he says it. So tone is huge. Tone is something that if you haven't worked on, it can make a huge difference in the way you deliver the material. Our team watched, probably last year, we watched a video of an agent who wanted help with his listing presentation. And he said all the right words. If you were to design an A+ listing presentation of all the things that you should say, it had everything, but his delivery was horrible. He wasn't confident. He didn't give you the sense that he could sell your house. He was saying the right things, but you could just tell like, I don't think this guy is going to get it done. So you want to make sure that you're watching your tone and how you're delivering and how you're speaking to people, right? So this is one of the sentences that we like to practice with here. When you emphasize a different word on the sentence, if somebody texted you this, it says what it says. But if somebody says, I didn't say he kicked the dog. I didn't say he kicked the dog. I didn't say he kicked the dog. Right? If you emphasize a different word, it means different things. So a way that we work on this is when we're role playing, we're recording it, we're playing it back, we're listening to it. Because sometimes you think you sound a certain way, and then you play it back and you say, oh, wait, I did not sound the way I thought I sounded. So tone is huge. You might think that you are being really strong, but then you listen to it back and you're like, oh, I was a little weak there. I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. So your upswing can indicate insincerity, surprise, questioning, right? Depending on the client, they may or may not like this, right? If you got an offer and you say, what do you think about making a counteroffer? You're kind of unsure, versus if you say, this is a strong buyer. What do you think about making a counteroffer? With the downswing, it's a much different meaning, even though you're saying the same thing. And then your level tone can indicate that you're disinterested or bored, right? This is a great offer. Fast talking can indicate that you're nervous, that you're overly enthusiastic. In our first session, we talked about personality styles, right? If you're a high I talking to a high C, sometimes it's going to overwhelm the customer. So you want to make sure that you're in tune to their pace and their emotions. It can convey that you're trying to be manipulative, or it may convey that you don't know what you're not knowledgeable, you're not confident, you're just trying to push through something. Slow talking, I had to use this guy from Bueller. Somebody who speaks at a deliberately slower pace might be seen as having being strategic, being thoughtful, being confident. It's giving the person time to absorb it. That's one way it can be interpreted. But like the guy who we saw in the listing presentation, he was a slower talker, but he was very hesitant. He was lacking conviction, and you just didn't get the feeling that he was going to get it done. Always mirror and match the client's emotion, tone, volume, right? If they're down here, don't be up here. If a client is mad about something, sometimes you want to even beat their tone. Sometimes if they're, if they're mad about, somebody left all the lights on, I can't believe they did that. That's ridiculous. That should never happen, right? It's a different response. They'll respond to it differently and they'll calm down much sooner if you are with them rather than saying, not a big deal. Now, not only are they mad about the lights, but now they're mad at you because they don't feel like you understand why they're mad. So ways to get better at this is going to be to practice, record yourself role play with a partner, be open to feedback, listen back to it, slow down, play with the speed and the volume, and see how you sound when you're talking. All right, now we're going to go into the closer framework. So the closer framework is basically all of this put together and the steps that you want to take when you're talking to clients, whether they're buyers or sellers. You want to go in and clarify, label, overview, sell the vacation, explain the concerns, and then reinforce their decision. So with clarify, you want to find out why they're talking to you. Why do they call you? Why are they going to open houses? Why are they looking for a price on their house? Why do they want to know what their house is worth? Why are you there? What do they need? Right? Sometimes it's, we had a client on the construction side who called us because they called us and said, I need an addition. I said, okay, I went over there and she said, I need more bedrooms. And I went up on her second floor and it looked like a basketball court. It was this whole huge, like, open space. And she's like, I only have one bedroom. And I'm like, yeah, but I could fit 5 bedrooms in here. So I made her a floor plan that broke it up into, I think it was 4 or 5 normal size bedrooms. And she said, I didn't even think of that. She just thought, I need an addition. But after talking through what did she really need, she really needed bedrooms, right? So what do they need? And anytime I go into someone's house, I'm always asking, what are we trying to solve here? Is the house too small? Are you, do you need to downsize? What is the problem that you're having that is causing you to be here? Use silence as a tool. Clarify by asking questions. If somebody says, I just want to get more information, that's usually they're usually trying to kind of hold off more questions, but you want to dig into that. Stay here until you really have a good understanding of what do they need. We use the LP Mama script, and I just like it because it's all questions. It's all, you're just asking questions, and based on what they say, that's going to tell you where to go next. You want to label the problem. So you want to identify it. You want to say, like, so what I'm hearing, you're outgrowing this house, but you don't want to sell it without knowing where you want to go, where you're going. Is that right? You want to use phrases like, is that right? Because you need them to tell you, yes, that's right, or no, not quite, right? You need to know, are you getting this right? Because if you go down a path and you're off a little bit, they're not going to be with you, right? So you want to make sure that when you feel like you've identified the problem, you want to ask them, it seems like this is happening. It looks like this is happening. Reflect back what you've heard. And the goal here is that you want to get agreement. They should say something like, that's right, that makes sense. Yes, that's exactly the problem. And the most important part here is that they have to be the one to label it and not you, because they're going to believe what they say, but they're not going to believe what you say. So when you're reflecting it back to them, it's not something that you have come up with. You're bringing back up something that they said. And then they can say yes, no, or, wherever it is. But you want to stay here until you're in agreement on what they need. So we had a client, I went with Laura, who's on this call, and she had a client who came to one of our open houses. It was 2 sisters, and they had another house, and they were like, we have all these problems with our current house. They don't have, we went through the whole list. They don't have enough bedroom space. They don't have enough office space. They want to more open kitchen. They want a big family room. So we went through these are all the things that's on the list. That's a problem. These are all the things that they need. So what are the different ways that we can get them there? So once we did that, then we went through, okay, these are all your pain points. You know, your bedrooms are too small. You don't have enough office space. You can hear each other when you're working and it's annoying. So we're going through, these are all the issues. How long have you had this problem? What other options have you considered? Right? What else have you thought about doing about this problem? So for this particular couple, it was two sisters. They said, well, we thought about maybe should we renovate our house? Should we knock our house down? Should we buy something else? Should we build something else? So we went through and talked through all of those and went through each option and said, okay, this is what happens if you go down this path, right? So we're going through how are all the ways that this can be solved. And then we stay there until they feel like, okay, we understand everything that they need, right? So when you're in this phase, you're back to you're asking questions, you're making restatements, you're telling anecdotal stories. Oh, I had another client who was just like you, that they had the same problem that they had, that you have, and this is what we did. And then you want to sell the vacation, right? So we went through all the options and we said, okay, this is where you want to be. This is the ultimate goal. This is how we can get you there, right? So we talked about a couple of different solutions. Ultimately, they decided renovating their house was going to cost way too much money. So selling is what they're going to do. And we have a plan now. And we told them about other clients that we had. This couple, they were in the same situation. This is what they did. This is how they got there. What you don't want to do is do the feature dump. When you go back to, again, going to, if you go to the seller and only talk about selling their house and don't talk about all the other things and just talk about these are all the things that I'm going to do. It's like when you go on vacation, you don't want to hear, okay, well, the first thing you have to go online, you have to book the ticket, and then you have to arrange your car from your house to the airport. And then when you get there, you know what we're going to do. We're going to take your bags and we're going to put them on the little belt, and then they're going to go back there and these guys are going to put them on the plane, and then you're going to go through security. You're going to take your shoes off, take your laptop off, take everything out. And then once you get into the airport, probably there's going to be a delay. So, be ready to hurry up and wait, right? Nobody cares about that. That's not what you're thinking about when you book a vacation. You're thinking about, where am I going? Where do I want to land? And where am I going? And can you get me there? Right? The airport sucks. The vacation is awesome. That's why you're there. And you want to be realistic with them. Anytime we're talking to people about, if you sell your house, if you renovate your house, if you build a house, there's pain through all of these, through all of these. Moving is the worst. You're displaced. There's people in your house. And that happens if you've got to move or have to do something with your house. There's no easy way to get there. But you want them to know that you're there to help them no matter what they choose. And then you want to explain how it works. Oh, the other thing I tell people at this phase is that no matter what you choose, it's like when you have a baby, right? When you're waiting for the baby to come, that's the worst part. It's like you can't wait for it to be over. It is the worst thing in the world. It just sucks. And then once the baby's here, it's like you forget about everything. Everything's amazing. And then you're like, let's do it again. So they just have to know that once they get to where they want to be, whether they're moving or whatever they're doing, if they need to go to Hawaii, once they get there, it's going to be worth whatever pain they went through, and that you can get them there, and that you know how to get them there, and that they feel like they can trust you to get them there, and that they can trust your advice. And then you want to explain, how does this all work? What are they most concerned about, right? What if I put my house in the market and it doesn't sell? What if I find another house that I like that's amazing and I haven't sold my house yet? What if we find a buyer for my house and they're a great buyer, but then I can't find another house? What if the timelines don't line up? What if, right? So depending on the client, you're going to have some clients who need to talk through this a little bit more, some clients who have to talk through it less. But what are all the different things that can happen? And then you want to talk them through, what's the best outcome? What's the worst outcome? What happens if you don't do anything? What happens if you just sit here? Oh, houses just continue to get more expensive, right? Construction costs just continue to go up. Things don't get better. Your problem gets worse because your kids are getting older. whatever it is, what happens if you do nothing? And just really talk them through and walk through different scenarios to make sure that they're making the right decision and that you're guiding them in the right place. So here you want to talk through things like, does it make sense? Does this work? You know, does this seem like it would be reasonable for you? How does that sound? Do you agree? Again, you want to make sure that they're on the same page. It's not combative. You have to both be together and making, you want to be making decisions with them together, not telling them kind of what to do. And then you want to reinforce the decision. Once they commit, do what you promised, right? Don't have them sign a contract, they don't hear from you for 2 days, right? Regret begins within 48 hours. So you want to make sure that they feel like they made the right decision and that you're doing all the things that you promised them that you would do. So that's kind of the overview. And then I added 2 more frameworks in here because, you know, I had somebody, and it's a little bit different when you're doing it in person because we're talking through the role plays, and somebody said, how do you work on your tone? How do you correct your tone when you're not sure if you're talking with the right tone? So there's 2 frameworks that I added here that will correct your tone in a hot minute if you're not sure how you should be talking to somebody. So one is the family advisor framework. And this is if your mom was selling her house out of state and you referred another agent over to talk to your mom, how would you want that agent to advise your mom? How would you want that agent to talk to your mom? How would you want that agent to protect your mom in the contract? That's how, that if you have that filter, whether it's your mom or your best friend or your brother or your sister, that will immediately answer how you should be having conversations with your clients, because it's the same thing. And that's what we always use in this office. It's how do you talk to clients? That is how you talk to clients, right? You are straight up with them. If you go meet someone and they tell you, I'm thinking about selling my house, but you can immediately see that that might not be the best decision because of whatever reason, you want to be the one to tell them that. So you want to make sure that you're giving advice that you would take, advice that you would want given to your own mom if somebody came into her house and was giving her advice on how to move forward. And then the other framework is the conviction framework, right? This is, you know, we see people who, I know in our town, there's a family that stands on the corner with their religious signs and they're yelling and they're waving at everybody. And, you know, people preach, you know, they knock on doors. Why are they doing this? Because they believe. Because they, you know, they believe they have conviction more than anything else. And if you don't believe the advice that you're giving, people can feel that. They're going to be able to know, oh, I don't know if I should listen to this person, right? So you have to believe in your own advice. If you're giving advice that you wouldn't take yourself, or if you're giving advice that you wouldn't give to a family member, that means that maybe you need to stop for a minute and change where you're coming from. If anybody's interested in the slides, I'm happy to send them to you, Emily.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll put the recording on Circle, and then if you want to send me those slides, I'll add that as well.
Okay.
So you guys can go back and listen, because that was a ton of great information, and yeah, super awesome. So thank you so much, Susan, for preparing all that. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of good, great information. Be happy to share more with our team. So if you put it in Circle, it'd be awesome.
Yep. I'll send it to you, Emily, if it's easier for you to put it, attach it to it.
okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Oh, somebody said, does your presentation follow that format? So I would say it's yes. So like it's less of a presentation and then it's more of a kind of like a sales and communication style, right? So when I'm going into a house, and in any house, whether it's construction or a real estate client, and sometimes they call us for one thing and end up being something different. We have sometimes people call us for construction, they end up saying no, selling is the better option, or they call us to sell and renovating is the better option. So I'm always asking, what's the problem? When somebody calls me to renovate their kitchen, I don't ask them, what color cabinets do you want, or what do you want? I say, what are the problems? What is in your basement that you have to go down and get all the time that we need to bring up to your kitchen? How many people do you need to sit in this kitchen? How many, where are the pain points? And we had, exactly, somebody just commented, be a problem solver. What's the problem and how do you solve it? I had another woman who had called our construction company because she thought her house was a tear down. As a tear down, it was worth about $550. And I said, well, I'd love to buy this house as a tear down for $550. I said, but on the open market, it's worth about $650. And she had no idea. She just thought because her house was small, that it must be a tear down because all the small houses are getting torn down. And I said, well, in your particular case, for these reasons, your highest and best value here is open market. And that's what we did. And we sold it. And she was very happy, but she just, came in with that one thing. I'm looking for offers from builders. And of course the builders are the builders, but because we do, we do all of it, I was able to say, look, that this is one option. Here's another option. Have you thought about this? And she says, no, I really didn't. But for $100,000, I'll most certainly do it. So it's really, anytime I go into a house, that's the first thing. It's that conversation. What's the problem? And then how do we solve it? Yeah, listen to the pain points. How do you handle the stress or pressure from a seller when a listing is sitting on the market? You've done everything possible to get it sold, but it's just sitting and not moving. Okay. So one thing, so I've been doing this for 23 years. So when I started real estate, nothing, things didn't move the way they do now. It's a very different market. So one thing I learned early on, because every time we would take a listing, they would never sell right away. They would sit on the market all the time. So number one rule I learned, you need to be talking to your seller all the time. Every day, every other day, like they're your friend, you're chatting with them all the time, because staying in communication, you won't lose a listing if you stay in communication. That's number one. Number two is figuring out why is it sitting on the market, right? So we have a conversation from the very beginning. If a house is priced right for the market, you will see 1 to 2 private showings a week and 1 offer for every 8 to 10 showings. So if we're hitting 15 showings and no offers, we need to talk about a price adjustment. But because we're continually having the conversation, it's not a surprise. We send a weekly progress report if they're on the market more than a week, saying, this is how many other homes are on the market. This is what's moving. This is what's not moving. And then we have the conversation. If other houses in the price range are selling and we're not, then that means that we're overpriced and we need to have a conversation about that. If nothing is moving, it may just be the market. So again, we want to figure out, why is the listing sitting on the market? Is it price? Is it market? Is it, if you have a house that the average time for that price range is 90 days and you've only been on the market for 45 days, then that's a normal time frame for that price bracket. So it's really being in communication with your seller. It shouldn't be stressful or pressure if you're in constant communication and you're making sure that they understand, this is what's happening. Oh, we're seeing 2 showings a week. This is good. This is what we want. If we're getting 2 showings a week within this amount of time, we should see an offer. If we don't, we need to talk, right? We need to talk about the price. So it really depends. We really dig into activity, what the rest of the market is doing. I had a listing one time, came on the market with 75 people through the open house, 0 offers. 2 other houses on the market just like it. I called the other agents, and that's the other thing, call the other agents with listings similar to yours and say, what are you seeing on your listing that you can share with your seller? And they both told me, same thing happened. We don't understand what's happening. Second week went by, same thing happened. 70 people at the open house, 0 offers. And now my seller's freaking out. He's like, we got to lower the price. And I said, no, we're not lowering the price because nothing is selling. And then the third weekend, we got multiple offers. So getting that market information, share it with your sellers. The communication is really the biggest thing. And that's what they always used to say. Just talk to your sellers, even if it's about nothing. Talk to them all the time and make sure that you're on the same page and giving them the information. And then that way they can decide if they want to make an adjustment or not. I hope that makes sense. All right. I think that was it for questions. It looks like, hopefully that answered your question, Tessa. And thank you, everybody.